Ada was the type of girl who stood out not only because of her beauty but also because of her intelligence. At just 17 years old, she had already achieved so much. Her grades were exceptional, and she had a kindness that made people gravitate toward her. Her parents were proud of her, and so were her friends. Ada had everything going for her: the looks, the brains, and a good heart. But like every other girl her age, she had her struggles. Sometimes, she questioned if her kindness was a weakness or a strength. Her best friend, Precious, was the complete opposite of Ada. Precious was loud, free-spirited, and rebellious. The two girls had been friends since childhood, but lately, Ada had begun to notice how different they were. Precious wasn't the brightest in their class, but she was popular, and her presence always commanded attention. Ada didn't mind that they were different. After all, opposites attract. But there were times when Ada's sense of right and wrong clashed with Precious's wild attitude. One afternoon, as they sat in the school courtyard, Precious leaned in and whispered, "Ada, you need to loosen up. You're too serious about life. There's a party tomorrow for Girls' Day. You have to come. It's going to be so much fun. Trust me, you'll love it." Ada hesitated. She wasn't one for parties, and especially not ones thrown by people she didn't know well. But Precious wouldn't take no for an answer. "You've always played it safe, Ada. Come on, it's just one night. You don't have to worry about anything." Ada looked at Precious's eager eyes and felt a small voice in her head telling her to go. Maybe she could use a night to relax and just enjoy being young. She wasn't the kind of girl to indulge in wild behaviors, but Precious had always been there for her, and perhaps this was her way of showing trust. So, Ada agreed, still unsure but willing to step out of her comfort zone for once. The next day, as the sun began to set, Ada found herself standing at the door of a large mansion, surrounded by an unfamiliar crowd. The house was lavish, with high gates and manicured lawns, the kind of place where only the wealthy seemed to belong. Precious had led her here, telling her to have fun and that she would meet some important people. Ada felt out of place but tried to calm herself. She trusted Precious, didn't she? Precious had always been there for her, and she wouldn't lead her astray, right? But something didn't feel right. As the night went on, Ada noticed that the people around her didn't seem like the friendly partygoers she expected. The older men with sharp suits and expensive watches seemed to look at her in a way that made her skin crawl. They were too eager to chat, too persistent. Precious, however, was already lost in conversation with some of the other guests, leaving Ada alone and feeling increasingly uncomfortable. The drinks kept flowing, and Precious had insisted she have one too. Ada, unsure and nervous, sipped on the drink, thinking it would help her relax. What harm could it do? But as soon as she finished the glass, she felt dizzy, disoriented. The room around her began to blur, the sounds muffled as if she were underwater. She tried to stand, but her legs felt weak, and before she knew it, she was being led upstairs by one of the men, someone she didn't know. Ada's heart raced as she realized something was horribly wrong. She tried to scream, but the words wouldn't come out. Everything felt hazy, her vision blurred, and her body betrayed her, moving against her will. She was terrified, but her strength failed her. The man's grip tightened, pulling her into a dark, quiet room. She couldn't escape. She was trapped. The door clicked shut behind her, and as the man approached, Ada's heart sank. She was too scared to speak. The voices in her head screamed for help, but she couldn't form the words. Her body felt like it was no longer her own. Panic flooded her chest as the realization set in. She was alone, and no one could hear her. This was no party. This was something far darker. But what could she do? She was scared. She was naive. And she had trusted Precious. Later that night, after what felt like an eternity, Ada managed to gather enough strength to escape the room. She stumbled down the stairs, her heart pounding, but Precious was nowhere to be found. In her panic, she looked for the exit, her mind racing with fear and confusion. When Ada finally made it home, she could barely sleep. Her thoughts were a blur. She couldn't stop thinking about the men, the fear, and the shame she felt. Shame for not speaking up, for not realizing sooner that something was wrong. She had trusted Precious, and now she felt betrayed. But Ada wasn't one to keep things bottled up for long. The next day, she met up with her other friend, Chioma, an 18-year-old girl who had always been like a big sister to her. Chioma noticed right away that something was off. Ada couldn't hide the trauma in her eyes, the way her hands trembled as she spoke. Ada took a deep breath, her voice breaking as she finally confessed what had happened. Chioma, I didn't know what to do. I couldn't stop them. Couldn't even move. I feel so lost. Chioma's face turned pale with shock. She wrapped Ada in her arms, holding her tightly. You're not alone, Ada. We will make sure they pay for this. I promise you we will make them pay. But Ada didn't know how to feel. Would anyone believe her? Would they even care? As Ada walked home, her thoughts continued to swirl. She couldn't shake the image of the men's faces, their cold eyes. She knew one thing for sure. She had to make her story known. She couldn't let them get away with what they had done. The fear, the shame, it all had to end. But how? How could she expose them? Little did Ada know, this was just the beginning of a long journey. And soon, the truth would come to light in ways she never expected. Ada didn't sleep that night. Her mind was filled with a storm of thoughts and emotions, none of them helping her find any clarity. She could still feel the weight of those men's hands on her, their eyes following her every move, their voices murmuring in her ears. The terror from that night had settled deep inside her, and no matter how hard she tried to push it away, it lingered, haunting her. When Ada met Chioma the next day, her friend's eyes were filled with concern. Chioma was older, wiser, and had always been a protector. She listened patiently as Ada shared every detail, even the parts Ada had hoped to forget. Chioma's face grew darker with each word, her jaw tightening in anger as she learned about what had happened. You have to tell someone, Ada, Chioma said softly. We can't let them get away with this. You're not alone in this. Ada shook her head, tears welling up in her eyes. I can't. What if no one believes me? What if they say I wanted it? What if they say I'm lying? Chioma grabbed Ada's hands gently, her voice firm but comforting. You don't have to carry this alone. We'll find a way to make sure they pay. But we have to start by telling the truth. If you don't speak up, they'll just do it to someone else. And you don't want that, do you? Ada felt the truth of Chioma's words cut deep into her. She didn't want anyone else to experience what she had. She didn't want anyone to go through the same nightmare she had lived through. But the thought of confronting her abusers, of speaking to the authorities, terrified her more than anything. Do you remember Precious? Ada asked quietly, her voice trembling. Chioma nodded. Of course. She's your best friend, right? What about her? Ada hesitated, her fingers nervously twisting a strand of her hair. She was there, Chioma. She was with me the whole time. She led me there. She told me I should go. And now I don't know who to trust. Chioma's expression hardened as she processed the new information. Are you saying Precious was part of this? Is she involved in all of this? Ada's eyes filled with confusion and hurt. I don't know, Chioma. I don't know if she's part of it, but her father, Precious's father, he's the one who organized the party. I saw him there too. He was with those men. Chioma's face turned pale with shock. That's terrible, Ada. But you need to be careful. If Precious's father is involved in all of this, that's bigger than just a few bad men. We need to make sure we have evidence and we need to be prepared. This isn't something we can handle alone. Ada felt overwhelmed. What could she do? She had been betrayed by her best friend, by the one person she thought she could trust. How could she fight back against people so powerful, people who could easily destroy her life? Maybe you should talk to your parents, Ada, Chioma suggested. They'll want to protect you and they'll know what to do. You don't have to carry this burden by yourself. Ada nodded slowly, the weight of Chioma's words sinking in. She needed her parents now more than ever. But she was scared. She was scared of what they would think. Scared of the shame, the pain. Scared of losing the little bit of normalcy she had left. But Chioma was right. Ada couldn't let them get away with it. She couldn't let the people who had hurt her continue to destroy young girls like her. As Ada walked home that afternoon, her heart felt like it was being pulled in two directions. Part of her wanted to forget it all, to pretend that nothing had happened and that everything was okay. But deep down, she knew she couldn't. She owed it to herself, to all the other girls, to make sure this didn't go unpunished. That night, she found herself standing in front of her parents, trembling as she prepared to tell them everything. The fear in her heart nearly made her turn and run. But she couldn't. She had to speak the truth. Her father was sitting in his usual chair, reading the newspaper, while her mother was in the kitchen preparing dinner. Ada could hear the clinking of pots and the soft hum of the radio in the background. It all felt so normal, so peaceful. But it felt like the calm before a storm. "Ada, what's wrong?" her mother asked as she noticed the look on Ada's face. "You look like you've seen a ghost." Ada swallowed hard, trying to find the words. She wanted to scream, to tell them everything at once, but the words felt like they were stuck in her throat. "Mom, Dad, there's something I need to tell you." Her father looked up from the newspaper, his brow furrowed. "What's going on, Ada? You're scaring us." Ada took a deep breath and, with trembling hands, she began to tell them everything. The party, the men, the drugging, the fear, and the betrayal by Precious. Her parents were silent for a long time, processing the horrific truth. Her mother's eyes filled with tears, and her father's face went pale with rage. "Who did this to you, Ada?" her father finally asked, his voice cold with fury. I don't know all their names," Ada whispered. "But Precious's father, he was one of them. He was the one who organized everything." Her mother gasped, her hands covering her mouth in shock. "Precious's father? But he's a wealthy man. He's well known in the community." "I don't care who he is," Ada's father growled, standing up. "No one does this to my daughter and gets away with it. We will find a way to make sure he pays for this." Ada felt a mix of relief and terror. Relief because her parents believed her, but terror because she now knew that taking on people like Precious's father wouldn't be easy. They had power, connections, and resources, but they wouldn't scare her. Not anymore. The next day, Ada's father made a call to his lawyer, a man known for handling tough cases. The plan was set in motion. They would go to the police, gather evidence, and make sure that Precious's father and his friends faced the consequences for what they had done. But Ada didn't know how long it would take, and she didn't know how far these men would go to protect their secrets. But one thing was certain, Ada was not backing down. As the day wore on, Ada's thoughts began to swirl with fear and hope. Would they be able to stop the men who had hurt her? Would Precious's betrayal destroy their friendship forever? And most importantly, would Ada ever feel safe again? The darkness of the night seemed to hang over her, and she knew that the battle ahead would be anything but easy. But Ada was determined to fight for herself, for the truth, and for all the young girls out there who had been silenced.
Hey, everyone! If you enjoy the videos here on Linky Space, please don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. Your support means everything. It's the only way this channel can grow and keep bringing you more amazing content. Every click, comment, and share truly makes a difference. Thank you for being part of the Linky Space family.
The next few days felt like a blur. Ada barely slept, consumed by thoughts of what was to come. Her father's lawyer, a serious and no-nonsense man named Mr. Agu, had been working tirelessly to gather evidence. Ada's parents were determined to see that the men who had harmed her would face the consequences of their actions. But the fear lingered in the back of Ada's mind. Precious's father had powerful friends, people in positions of influence. Ada couldn't shake the feeling that this fight wasn't just going to be about exposing the truth. It was going to be a battle for survival. As the days passed, Ada noticed a shift in her. The fear that had held her captive for so long started to turn into something else. Anger, determination. She couldn't let them win. She couldn't let them hurt anyone else the way they had hurt her. But the journey was far from easy. The men involved in the scandal had money, power, and the means to manipulate the system. One afternoon, Ada sat with Chioma at a local cafe, her heart pounding in her chest. Chioma had been her rock through all of this, the one person who hadn't looked at her with pity. Instead, Chioma looked at her like a warrior, a girl who was going to fight back. "Chioma, I'm scared," Ada whispered, her voice barely audible over the sound of the bustling cafe. "I'm scared they'll find a way to shut me up. What if they make it all go away? What if they say it's my fault?" Chioma reached across the table and took Ada's hand, her grip firm and reassuring. "Ada, you've already spoken the truth. You've already made the decision to fight. No one can take that from you. And no matter how hard it gets, I'm right here with you. We're going to make sure you get justice. They can't intimidate us." But the words didn't settle Ada's nerves. As they left the cafe, Chioma hugged her tightly, saying, "We'll win, Ada. You've already won in my eyes, because you were brave enough to speak out." Days turned into weeks and Ada's anxiety grew. The police had taken the statements and started their investigation, but the weight of the situation was beginning to wear her down. She heard nothing from Precious. Not a word. The silence was deafening, and with every day that passed, Ada felt the betrayal deepen. Then came the phone call that changed everything. It was Mr. Egu, Ada's father's lawyer. His voice was serious, but there was a note of urgency that made Ada's heart race. "Ada, we've got something. We have enough evidence to bring Precious's father and the others to trial. It's going to be difficult, but we're ready. Are you?" The question hung in the air, but Ada already knew her answer. There was no turning back now. She had come this far and she wasn't about to stop. She was going to face her abusers in court. She was going to make sure they were held accountable. The court case was set, and Ada found herself in a courtroom filled with strangers. Her heart raced in her chest, her palms sweaty, but she held her head high. The prosecution presented the evidence, photographs, text messages, and testimonies from other girls who had been lured to parties just like the one Ada had attended. It was clear that this wasn't an isolated incident. There was a pattern, and Precious's father was at the center of it all. Ada's stomach twisted with a mixture of fear and relief. She couldn't believe how many other young girls had suffered the same fate. But seeing them speak out, seeing them fight for justice, gave Ada the strength she needed to keep going. Then, just as the case was gaining momentum, an unexpected twist occurred. Precious entered the courtroom. Ada's breath caught in her throat as her former best friend stepped into the room. Precious's eyes avoided Ada's gaze, and she walked quickly to the other side of the courtroom, where her father and his associates sat. Ada could see the fear in her eyes, the guilt that weighed on her shoulders. For the first time, Ada realized how much Precious had been affected by her own actions. The moment Precious's father took the stand, Ada knew the fight was far from over. He was a smooth talker, a man who knew how to manipulate people with his words. His charm was almost palpable, and for a moment, Ada feared he would get away with everything. But then Mr. Egu stood up and delivered his closing statement. "Your Honor," Mr. Egu began, his voice strong and unwavering, "the truth cannot be hidden by wealth or power. These men thought they could silence Ada, that they could control her and other young girls. But Ada's courage has proven that there is no price for justice. We will not allow them to continue their reign of terror. We will not be silenced." The courtroom fell silent. Ada's heart raced in her chest, but she felt something shift within her. She wasn't alone. She had people fighting for her, Chioma, her parents, and even the brave girls who had spoken up. The truth was out now, and there was no going back. As the judge prepared to announce the verdict, Ada's hands shook. She looked at Precious one last time, her former friend's face filled with regret. Ada didn't know what the future held, but she knew that this was the moment of reckoning. The men who had caused her pain were about to face the consequences of their actions. Then the judge spoke. "After careful consideration of the evidence, the court finds the accused guilty of all charges. The sentences will be passed shortly." Ada's heart leapt into her throat. She had won. Justice had been served. As Ada left the courthouse, she felt a sense of peace that had eluded her for so long. She had fought for herself, for the truth, and for every young girl who had been silenced by fear. But it wasn't just about her. It was about changing the narrative, about showing the world that no one, no matter how rich or powerful, could escape the truth. Ada became an inspiration to others, young girls who had been afraid to speak up, young girls who had been manipulated or abused. She showed them that their voices mattered, that they could stand up for themselves and demand justice. And in the end, that was her victory. Precious, on the other hand, was left to grapple with her own conscience. She had betrayed her best friend, and now she had to live with the consequences. But Ada didn't hate her. She didn't have the energy for hate. She had fought for what was right, and that was enough. The world wasn't perfect, and Ada knew there was still work to be done. But for the first time in a long time, she felt free. And as she walked away from the courthouse, hand in hand with her parents, she knew that she had made a difference. The battle had been won, but the war was far from over.